am so excited to welcome Maggie Doyne and Luke Metcalf. Maggie's story is truly, truly inspiring. She grew up in suburban New Jersey and took a gap year to travel about a dozen years ago now, I think. And while in Nepal, she encountered children doing tasks such as crushing rocks to help support their families, and wondered, really, as she wrote in the book, what have we done as a human family that our children are living this way? And more importantly, what can be done to reverse the course? And that question she repeats and reiterates in her exploration through the book. And forward to today, Blink Now, which is a nonprofit she supports a children's home, a health clinic, a women's center, and a school that all incorporate and celebrate the local community in Nepal, which I think is really important. And that's what connects Luke to this story. He was raised in Pomfret, about a mile as the crow flies from where I live. And he was a Blink Now volunteer for nearly 6 years. And he went a sustainability fellow whose role morphed, the construction project manager for the school campus, which is a huge sustainable project. And he worked as the proxy between Matt and the architects and engineers and site workers. And during that, he lived in the children's home, and they became his Nepal family. And this brief introduction provides the setting. The story Maggie narrates in the book is so much more. It's coming of age, it's understanding how people connect, the power of privilege, the intensity of love, the incredible, I have to say, devastation of heartbreak, and as the subtitle suggests, the importance of hope. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the screen over to the two of you and enjoy myself.
Great. Well, thank you, Liza. I'm going to make sure that I don't do too much talking during this, because I know that Maggie is the star of the show. It's a real honor to be here and to be seeing so many community members on the chat list, and to just have this kind of feel a little bit like full circle, especially having gotten my copy of the book a few days ago and reading it. And then actually Maggie also recorded herself reading the book as an audible, and I got that too, and started listening to that as well. I first went to Nepal right after undergrad, and it just completely transformed my life. It took me from a small town boy from Pomfret, and then I became kind of like a college frat bro a little bit, and then it just like it shattered all of that, and ended up staying for 6 years, and just has changed the course of my life. And so it's great to be here and to be interviewing Maggie.
You were never just a frat boy. What are you talking about?
Not just, but you saw, there are a lot of pictures from me early on arriving in Nepal with my tank top and my big mop of hair.
And your huge, beautiful, beaming heart. And I love you so much. Thank you for doing this, and thank you for being there. And I love your description, though, of yourself. That's so not true. But you weren't a frat. Okay.
I wasn't a frat. I wasn't a frat. Yeah. Things are different now. I mean, when I was driving, I'm actually down in Florida right now, so fortunately I'm not being afflicted by the internet issues in rural Vermont. But I first turned on the Audible, and Maggie, when you first started reading through, I could hear the smile in your voice, and especially describing a morning at Coppola Valley. I mean, it just is mind-blowing. I mean, were you smiling the whole time reading? Probably not the whole time, but reading this story, was it just like a fulfillment of a dream?
Yeah, it was. I mean, you'll notice when you read the book, a common question that we get asked is, what is the typical day in the life in Nepal? And as you know, Luke, it's impossible to explain. And I set out on the journey to transport people to this world and this home and this family who I love so much and have my entire heart. But it's also the reality that I know. And it was hard to explain what is a typical day. One, because every day is so different. Two, because I think I'd just gotten used to the sounds and the smells and the people that it was hard to kind of get on paper. and just do it justice. But through kind of the editing process, we decided to start the prologue with the morning chapter, and then figure out what the bookends were. And then that's the prologue is the morning, and the epilogue is actually satsang. And as you know, every single day at Coppola starts with this chaotic morning of skateboards and lost socks and 50 children getting ready for school, and the sounds of the birds and the joy and the laughter and the waking up of children and a house and a bell. And it ends with satsang, us all coming together in a circle. And so we use that as a sort of form work for the book, and a beginning and an end. And it's funny that you said the morning really took you there, because we tried to bring the reader immediately in on that journey and kind of think about the smells and the feel and the mountains and the sounds that you hear. And that was actually really challenging for me to do as a writer. I needed a lot of just like help and going deeper and describe more. And so when Krishna read it, he was laughing. He was just like, oh my gosh, that is how every morning is. Yeah. And I was telling the story. You can see me smiling because I felt like I was there. And I feel like in a way we brought the journey to the page, and we wanted to make people feel like they were in this world 8,000 miles away, or from wherever they're reading it. And that's what we intended to do in that first scene. And I needed like so much help in figuring out what to talk about. I would like text friends, and I would text the kids and ask like, what is a morning? What are the things you remember? And that's how that scene and that chapter came to be.
I mean, and to for those, which is probably the majority of the attendees that haven't seen a picture or visited, like a lot of my family visited, the children's home, like a lot of construction in Nepal, it's every floor has a veranda that basically goes the full way around. And Coppola Valley Children's Home is two buildings like that with a veranda going between them. So if you stand in the right spot, it's kind of like those old like glass anthill things where you can see the ants burrowing and scurrying around, and you see kids, the two kids running this way chasing after each other, and then kids on the next floor up, it's 4 stories, playing soccer, and then kids on the roof flying kites. It's just beautiful, utterly beautiful chaos.
Yeah, there's always something happening, and it's such a home, and like any home, there's chaos and joy, and inevitably somebody crying, and inevitably somebody, like the walnut game in the in the side yard, and bantering back and forth, and auntie talk and auntie tea. And thank you for seeing that and feeling that scene, and yeah, feeling transported there. That was intentional. So thank you.
Yeah, it worked. And I mean, it also, the magical thing about the mornings at Coppola is people arrive at different times. So, like you described so well in that chapter, it's like the aunties are up at the crack of dawn preparing the tea and preparing breakfast and peeling pomegranates. And then the children start filtering out of their rooms and they're playing in the side yard. And it just, if you get up early enough and you just sit down there, and inevitably Taupe is by the kitchen watching the scene. It's this all the different, all the different characters, and there's so many sort of like slowly appear on the scene in the mornings.
I wrote that scene during a Coppola morning, and all of that was actually happening, so it made it really easy.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Yeah, and I think you actually describe it in that chapter, one of the other chapters, just like the different sort of the different groups of your team, because obviously it isn't just you, and you throughout the entire book you talk through like the auntie team, the uncle team, the fellows Taupe and Baju who are there from the beginning, and like it's starting from the beginning of just you putting on a backpack to what the team looks like now is like that itself is an amazing accomplishment, the way that you've been able to bring people together for this central mission. And I don't know, I'm curious to know, like, now that I've also shifted to working for a company that like builds a team, and it's, you know, it's for profit, totally different world, but like, how did you build a team? Like, what did you look for in the people that you brought on and that you wanted to like surround your children with?
Oh, thank you. One of the reasons for writing the book was because in the media and in the news and in the blips of, you know, the story being told, it was just this very forward-facing founder, just me story. And I wanted to break that down because the secret sauce, the magic of Coppola, the reason why we've been successful and impactful in our work is because of the people and the team. And it's one of the biggest gifts, and it's the core and the heart of what we do. And how do we find that team? I think it started with Tope and I as co-founders, and just having really similar values and ideology and wishes for the world. Tope was an orphan himself, as you know. He had an upbringing in rural Calicut, which, for those of you who don't know, is one of the most remote regions of the entire world, nestled away in the Himalayas, that takes days to get there by walking. So it was driven by him really wanting to go back to his roots and make changes in his community, and go back in time to kind of figure out how he could do better by other children and make sure that what happened to him didn't happen to anyone else. And then, so that was kind of the core founding team, but then finding people with a similar vision, similar heart, similar wishes. A lot of our core founding team members are orphans themselves, or victims of poverty, and, you know, being born into that certain region. So I think that really helped kind of get that initial snowball moving. Just like, these were people who had those things happen to them, were impacted by poverty, were impacted by war, were impacted by the loss of both their parents at a young age, or having to work at the age of 8 or 9. So it was within them. And because of those experiences that had happened to them, they knew what the changes that they wanted to bring about to this next generation of kids following Civil War. But when you ask, like, what did you look for in building a team? Because now we are this huge, robust, amazing team. And I touched on this when I touched upon you, is that we looked at heart, we looked at love, we looked at, you know, that's something that we don't talk about in business or development or in the media or the world. I mean, we talk about love in a romantic sense, but a lot of what I believe is missing at the core of every mission and at the core of our world is this human value of love, and love for each other, and love for our human family. And so one thing that I look for is love of mission, love of children, love of, you know, heart, and and love of work, and alignment, I guess, alignment with heart. And I've rarely been wrong when I hired or look to build a team or look for volunteers, look to curate a group of people who were very heart focused, very heart centric. And if you look at our supporters around the world, if you look at our donors, they have this similar trait. And, you know, look at our team, we love each other so much, and our fellows, it's like very heart centric. So yeah, that's the one thing I look at. I look at people whose face and eyes light up when a child enters the room, and have that own childlike innocence inside of them. Because I think when you keep that childlike wonder and that childlike magic, it goes so far. So that's a similar, Tope has that.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, like I think a lot of the people I love and respect and admire have that childlike wonder, that curiosity, that beauty of heart. And Tope and I built our team that way. So we didn't look for the PhDs, although we have some of those now. We didn't look for the glossiest of resumes, the people with the most connections, the people who looked good on paper. We looked for that heart. And we try to lead with heart. We try to follow our hearts. we have the strategy, we have the business plan, we have all of those things too, but heart's really important to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, so I was there for 6 years, and, you know, the last 3 of those years, probably, we had an extremely stable group of people that were operating as fellows. And, you know, it's true, you really were rarely wrong about a hire, but obviously it's different to be you in Nepal interviewing somebody in the US or Canada or wherever. When you get to Surkhet, it can be a different sort of, it's different than we live in Woodstock or in New Jersey. It's sort of a different and more challenging way of living for some people. Like, could you tell when somebody came immediately? Like, I don't know if you're going to be able to last.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, it's hard and there's difficulties. And yeah, we shouldn't ignore like the hardships, it was grueling, as you know. And I guess when you talk about love, it can seem like airy fairy and I'm just gonna hire people who love. And it's not that at all. It's like, also, do you love what you do so much that you will work so hard and push through anything? And I mean, I've watched you on that site. I've watched our team. We worked hard. That's probably the hardest you've ever worked in your life. I don't know.
I looked like an alien for the last 3 years. I have so many gray hairs that I did not have before I went.
But I think the hard work and the grit and the passion and the mission and the vision, it really, when you have all of that, I think the hard work comes really naturally, and the perseverance. People have asked me over the years, like, why didn't you just quit? Like, there were so many times that it got so hard and so impossible. Why didn't you just walk away? And I've asked you that, Luke. I was like, on those days where we thought that school just would never get built and we were up against every single challenge, like, why didn't you quit? And I think you would say, because I love those kids so goddamn much. And, I think it is the thing that kind of kept us, it's the thing that keeps you going in those impossible moments when things feel impossible. So, yeah, because it is hard. It is hard work. There are so many children we couldn't serve. We had so much loss. We had so much grief. We had so much failure. We made so many mistakes. But it's what will keep you going and standing up and going at it again and again and again, and keep trying, never give up, kind of thing. Which is why we're here after all these years, and why you stayed for 6.
Well, I know it's funny you bring that up, because, like, yes, it was always, as soon as you meet the children, and especially for us volunteers, we actually lived in the children's home for the first 3 or 4 years while I was there, and they truly did become a Nepali family. It was such a routine. They were going to school. I was going up to work on the new school, but you start and end each day with them, and it would be impossible to leave with work unfinished. So that definitely resonates with me. There was also a time, I think it was like 2 years in, where I think we were running into some particularly challenging times with the construction, and it was just me and Tope. We were on the other side of the campus or something, and he just looked at me and he said, "Luke, promise me you won't leave until the school's done." And I said, "Tope, I promise." He got me totally cornered. I never would have anyway, but it was like, knowing Tope, you don't break a promise. No, of all the people to break a promise with,
no, you do not break Tope's trust. That is his. No. That is everything. Yeah, no, I think when the kids read the book and they're reading it one by one, they said, "Well, why did you pick me? Like, why me?" They had a lot of those questions, and I didn't want to say like, "Oh, because you're special," or like, which is true, and "Oh, because of this, or because of chance, or because of circumstance, or just, destiny." I didn't want to make that promise because the truth is, I think we would have loved every single child in that home, because every child is worthy of love, and every child is worthy of a quality education. Every child is worthy of a beautiful home and a beautiful family. And when a child is given that, they blossom and they grow and you come to love them. It's just human nature. Love expands. So yeah, when you have an environment just set up for a child to thrive and grow and be loved, they do the rest. And I mean, that's why we have hundreds of graduates now, like off and doing cool things in the world. Yeah.
Well, there's a really tough, I mean, like strangely beautiful, but pretty tough part of the book where you describe like the decision process when you're starting out, and this held true throughout, but of deciding who can come and join the Coppola school. And the quote, I have it written here, is like, you struggle to discriminate between the poor and the desperate, the hungry and the starving, who we can help and who is beyond help. And it's just this, like, you're just pulled in so many different directions. Like how did you and the team approach that? I mean, how do you come up with a criteria for, you are in incredibly dire position, or you are in an even more dire position, so we can only take you? And what are those conversations like?
Well, the end of that line is that it's a ghost that haunts me, and it does. It's the thing that keeps me up, and you wonder, like, about, you know, it's a constant, the what ifs of life, and the constant, like, did we make the right decision? Did we choose the right child? Did we, you know, why this one and why not that one? You remember being in those admissions panels and conversations and being like, well, that one has a cow, or that one has 1 meter land. Yeah, so I think in the end, we built out like criteria, strategy, pages long documentation and requirements, and a whole admissions criteria that were guidelines that helped guide those decisions and not make it feel like we're just picking out of a lottery ball. But that was really helpful. And then just bringing on a local team. Again, I always say this, but making sure we had a robust admissions committee with people of diverse backgrounds who could do home visits, who could do background checks, who could check on documentation. And we got better and better at that over the years, and a better, stronger, more robust like process and procedure oriented around it. Yeah.
Could you describe the mission of Coppola Valley School? Charlie Shackleton asked.
Hi, Charlie. We strive to create a world where every child is safe and educated and loved. And we do this through Coppola Valley, changing the world by empowering Nepal's children. So we work in Midwestern Nepal in a place called Surkhet. I stumbled upon this region. My co-founder is from this region. I stumbled upon this region on my gap year. There were children breaking rocks. There were children struggling due to the effects of civil war. And unfortunately, yeah, this is the reality of many children. There was 1 million orphan children in Nepal following the civil war. And we created just a program around addressing the needs of these kids and how to make sure that we could stop and change the trajectory of their lives through education. We believe that education is the world's greatest equalizer, the best investment that you can make, and the biggest change-making agent. So we started by kind of enrolling kids into school. Tope and I started at the riverbed and saying, like, one day we want to walk across this riverbed. We never want to see a single child breaking rocks. And as we kind of worked through that process of trying to remove kids from the riverbed breaking rocks to survive, we were like, oh, going to school with just a backpack and a uniform and like enrolling kids into school, it's scratching the surface, but there's so much more that's needed. Early intervention, critical learning periods, home, safety. Like, you can't even begin to put a child into school unless you know they're going to live past the age of 5, because they're not, you know, having dysentery. You know, it's actually, diarrhea is one of the leading causes of death for children around the world. So we started looking at clean water, at health and wellness, at a home. And then our programs kind of grew organically based on what we saw as the needs in this rural community, struggling, coming out of a civil war, struggling with so many issues. And we looked with the community in partnership, deep partnership with the community at how to address those needs and change that community from the inside out, from the bottom up, I guess.
Charlie's actually my godfather. I think he already knew all
Oh, the
that, but nice
godfather.
to. You'll meet him at the wedding.
Oh, yeah. Spoiler alert: Luke also met his wife Kelly at Coppola, who worked at our women's center. Soon to be fiance. But like the women's center is a great example of that. I mean, we created a school and a home first because we're like, oh, before we can get kids into school, they need a home, they need a loving, nurturing environment, they need to know that food's always there, they need family, they need cozy blankets and all of the things. And then we're like, wait, kids are coming into the school from the community, but the home environments in the community is also not safe. We need to empower women for the students of the community. And that, gave birth to the Women's Center. And then through the Women's Center, we were like, oh my gosh, we need quality curriculum. And then, you were involved in creating a green school because we didn't have resources to run the school. So it was through this, energy resources, solar, water. We wanted to grow our own food. So yeah, through that process, the programs kind of bloomed and they're all very integrated with each other.
Yeah. One thing that, as you describe this and like, as you describe it now and in the book, it's like a totally different model, most likely from like, it's a very different type of school than is typical in that area. Like even you describe in the book that there's no corporal punishment at Coppola Valley, but that's pretty pervasive in other schools. Like, and you asked yourself, the quote was like, does knowing something different mean that I know something better? Mm-hmm. And like, how was this like following your heart the whole time, setting up this model? Or was there a lot of consulting with the board and with, doing your own reading and research? How did you end up at this very holistic way of thinking about this?
I think we were just living it. We were doing it. We were having those conversations. We were watching real life happen and, take place right before our very eyes. So we could identify the gaps. We could identify the mistakes. We'd get far and then we'd hit a barrier and be like, okay, how do we address this issue? So it was through slow, organic change, learning, collaboration, that we started to like holistically address the problems. And one of the questions Tope and I always asked ourselves was like, if we can do this in rural Nepal, in one of the most food deficit regions of the world, during political turmoil, following a civil war, amidst an earthquake, natural disasters, serving the poorest of the poor, maybe it can be done anywhere. And so we went in with that belief system. We knew that it worked, but we had to like really show that and prove it and like, go through the changes. We knew that we had to go really deep in community. We knew that it was going to come down to raising children, creating a culture of love and respect and community and values. And then it was kind of just like finding resources and people to believe in us and believe that it was possible. And then just getting down and dirty and like doing it and doing the work and making sure. I always say Coppola is the place you'd want your children to go to school. And a lot of the birth of Coppola Valley was like things that we didn't like we hated orphanages. Think of the word orphanage. It's like this dark, dismal, terrible place. Think about the foster care system. It's broken. You think of the failures. You think of like abandonment and, the dark underbelly of how children and vulnerable children are being raised. And so we wanted to really flip that on the head and create joy and light and laughter and love and kind of change the game in that way. Like the school, it's outdoors, like nature is so important to what we do. The health clinic isn't just about getting vaccines and deworming parasites and medical checkups. It's also about healing from trauma and having mental health counseling and going out in the forest for, you know, a walk or doing an art project after school, joining a soccer team. So it was through that, like, oh, this little piece is missing. Let's try this. Okay, now we have that figured out, but the kids are still hungry and this is the only meal that they're getting in the day. How do we build the nutrition program? And yeah, kind of like tinkered with it and played with it and brought on other experts in the field to help work with us. That's how we have a team now. And that's how you came. And that's how, like, you know, we built the team that way too, of like, oh, we're missing this skill. We're missing this piece of knowledge. Let's bring on a board member. Let's bring on an advisor. Let's bring on this person who knows this thing and can bring us this thing and work with us and teach us this.
I'd like to,
the programs were built too.
I'd like to like latch on to one thing you said, which is that like, if we can do this here, like it can be done anywhere. And like, there were massive challenges. I mean, throughout the book, anyone reading it is like, this is not an easy thing to do, but it's extremely important work. Like, and it's something that I often struggled with actually working there. Like the school that we were building was beautiful, it was well funded, but at times, you know, with the budget, it was like, we could make this amazing school that's going to, you know, take in 400 kids at a time, or maybe we spend a tenth as much and make 10 much less beautiful, safe like schools. So like, what is like the optimal solution, and like what is the sort of recipe in your mind that makes what has happened with Coppola Valley scalable and replicable?
So my litmus test is, you know, we need to be cost efficient because we don't have endless resources and we're hustling all the time to make ends meet. But at the same time, I'll never sacrifice quality, safety. You know, Dr. Paul Farmer, who recently passed away and started Partners in Health, he was looking at the medical infrastructures and hospitals around the world. He started in Haiti and he saw the hospitals in Haiti and was like, I would never send my mother here. And if I would never send my mother here, then why is it okay that we have these standards set for the rest of the world? And, you know, we wanted to create a school that our little brothers, our little sisters, our own children would go to. And that was kind of the litmus test. I mean, kids don't need like all of the first world luxuries, but I wanted to show that even with a little bit of resources, you can create beauty, you can create a quality education, and embrace the culture, embrace the curriculum. So yeah, I think just not settling for less than just because, you know, just because it's a vulnerable child and that's the best we can do. I think as we love the kids so much, we wanted the best for them. It doesn't mean they're like getting all the best things and materials, but they deserve to be safe. They deserve certain standards and quality of life and we're talking a lot about basic human needs and rights, to be honest. You know, I used to get really caught up in like the why of it all. Like, why do I just had a baby. Like I got amazing care in North America. It's the reason why I'm here right now, is to have a baby in North America with good care. And like, why me? I'm so lucky I had so much privilege. Like, why was I born in Mendham, New Jersey with everything in the entire world? And then there was HEMA breaking rocks. And now, instead of focusing any energy on that or having any guilt about that, instead I'm like, how do we make sure that every single woman has access to maternal care? How do we make sure that every single child has a quality education similar to what I got in New Jersey public schools? How do we make sure that there's more opportunity, more equality? How do we change the game? How do we leverage our privilege and give to others and give back? And so I kind of try to get a lot more hung up on those questions instead of the why of it all, because the whys don't really make sense. they don't.
Mhm.
It's just too much to process.
Yeah.
But there's a
And that-
lot of that in here of just like, you're right, the push and pull and how we decide and how those decisions are made and what we settle for, you know? That was the constant arc of the book, is like, well, is this the culture, or is this something that we're going to try to work with the community to change?
Mhm. Yeah.
And in the beginning, you see me like fight, like throw my body in, like, let's try to change this, let's make it better. And then kind of by the end, you're like, no, this, after a lot of failure, you realize it has to be from the community
Incremental.
itself and small changes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's this scene of you of one of the students, and I remember this. This is actually after I joined. One of the students, I think she was 14, gets married off, and you go to basically confront her family and the community, and you basically get caught up in a riot. And the lesson I guess you learn from that is that just probably wasn't the most effective way to address that with outrage. I mean, you feel the outrage, but then of course Tope's reaction is, being the very sort of strategic mind that he is he's equally outraged, but he takes an alternative approach.
Yeah. Thank goodness for Tope.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think there was definitely like, you feel so many emotions because of that love, because of, you know, this was our all-star student. I mean, she was #1 at everything. She was up on stage dancing. She was winning debate. She was on the chess team. She was the superstar. And then all of a sudden she's married and doesn't show up to class.
Yep.
And you take it as a major failure. Like, this is a failure. You know, when our girls are sleeping in cow sheds during their period, that's a failure. When there's a belief system that you need to hit kids in the classroom with a stick to get them to listen, that felt like this failure and this thing I had to go in and fight and change and show. And in the end, like, and we had our failures, right? Like, in the end, that early marriage happened. You know, we've had our fair share, but it was learning that it's not a marathon. It's a marathon, not a
That's a
race.
marathon, very much.
Yeah, like, we had to be in it for the long run. We had to have those losses for the longer term wins and the longer term community change that had to happen. And I had to learn too.
I want to pivot also because I don't want, you know, the people watching to think like, you know, that the perspective among us foreigners, who are a very small group over there, was that like things needed to change. There's a great time in the book where you talk about how you have no idea how to plant a potato, and you're like, oh, I didn't even know how that works. Or like, you didn't know how to milk a cow. Yeah, and you know, the grandmother goat, you get like a bad deal on buying a goat. Like, what are the biggest things that you've learned from your Nepali cohorts, whether that's from Tope or just being in the community?
Well, the thing I love about us is that it didn't always have to be so serious, you know,
Yeah.
like, we'd make light of our differences. We would joke with each other. We'd make fun of each other. Like, you know, Tope always joking about how we use toilet paper. Oh, you foreigners and your toilet paper. And we'd be like, you Nepalis and your, you know, buckets. Like, it was just, we made light of it, you know, like, I was this New Jersey girl. I'd never planted a potato. And the aunties were like, you've never planted a potato? Like, who are you? How did you grow up?
Yeah.
And all of these, like, you know, I still remember driving, and I was the first woman in that region to drive a scooter, drive a motorcycle, drive a car ultimately. And they would be like, you're so smart, you're amazing, you're so strong, oh my God, we didn't know women could do that. And I was like, oh, no, you just, if you grew up the way I did, you would learn to drive. You take this class, it's called driver's ed, you take a test, like pretty much everyone can drive. So we would just like have those conversations. It wasn't always like menstrual huts and taking on of corporal punishment or like child marriage. It was building those relationships and kind of making light of of it and learning from each other and immersing each other in each other's culture and talking, right? And I think building a team is that too. It's learning from each other and knowing that there's not black or white or one way or another way of doing things, but that together, when all of us are at the table working together, learning from each other, we can create something beautiful and magical. So there's a lot of joy at Coppola, and there's a lot of lightness, and there's a lot of fun. And I wanted that lightness and that joy and that laughter and that teasing of each other to like come alive in the book too. And I didn't want it to be like a spiral of, I didn't want it to be a book about poverty and injustice and like human suffering and grief, because that's not life. It's not all of that. There's ups and there's downs, there's highs, there's lows. There's this whole vortex of so many different things wrapped up in that. So yeah.
Yeah, that's an apt description. I mean, like a typical day, there is an incredible lightness there. I think it probably comes a lot from the kids and just being surrounded by them, but also because some of the things that, you know, you work with and that the team worked with were really hard, and you cannot last if that's all you're focused on. It's like a doctor who, you know, who works in an ER, like he can't take that home with him or she and continue being effective in their job.
Don't you think that's how we lasted for that many years? It's like the fun and the joy and the laughter and like being able to not take ourselves too seriously. I find that in the field of nonprofit work, there's like so much self-righteousness and like, do you know what's happening and blah, blah, blah. And then that's just never been me, I think.
Yeah.
That's never been Hope or I. Hope's not the guy that sits there and is like, you know what happened to me when I was 8, and like he lectures the kids sometimes, but no, like it's just people, and again, a lot of it just doesn't make sense. So let's just do our best to like use our power and our privilege to make things better and have fun along the way. Because if we're not having fun, we only get this one shot at life, so we might as well have fun. And when we have the love and the joy, take that in too.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it came a lot from you too, actually, that because like I've never met anyone, maybe Franny's on this call, like the two of you, Tide, maybe you a little bit more, Maggie, I'm not sure, but like who feels their emotions and is as empathetic for their friends and everyone's around them, their suffering and their joys. And like, that is contagious and always was contagious for the full team. But you could pivot from like dealing with an utterly, you know, just a very traumatic experience to then, you know, just we have as a team, we can go out, we can have a good time together, and that ability to sort of compartmentalize, I think, made you a really, really effective person for the role that you had, because you were always really genuinely feeling for the suffering and the joy that you saw, but also still capable of being very light and sort of taking that sort of mental and emotional rest.
Isn't that a child though too? Like children are so resilient, and so like, you know, it's impossible to not look at a child and feel hope and feel wonder and feel play. And I never want to lose that in myself. Like that is something I will fight for, the ability to play and stay light and, you know, be all jokey. A lot of times when people meet me, like I've been meeting people this week, like talking to high schoolers and stuff, they'll be like, I'm so surprised. You're so normal. I'm like, what did you think I was gonna be? Like, I think people think that it's gonna be this
of course
serious, like, I don't know, but
intimidating,
or just like let me tell you about the problems of our children. Like I have that side of me for sure, but it's also like, let's just do this and keep it. There's enough like hard things. Let's talk about the good things too.
Yeah, that's probably why the story resonates with so many people, is that like I mean, having worked with you, I know you're normal. I know it's not this like, well, you're certainly not normal, but you're relatable and you know, you're my friend. And so like, I know that to be true, but I think that is why it shows through. It shows through in the book. It shows through in the reading. It shows through in like when you've spoken to people. And I think that's part of why the story resonates with a lot of people. It's like, I could do that, or my child could do that.
I
They don't
wanted
have to
everyone to
be
feel like,
absolutely
yeah,
extraordinary.
I wanted everyone to feel like, oh, that's me, because I am like,
Yeah.
I'm just a girl from Jersey. Like oftentimes we idolize or put up on a pedestal or like romanticize this idea of humanitarianism or philanthropy or change making or nonprofits. And I wanted to just knock that down and be like, actually, this is something we are all called to do. We all can do this work. You know, I'm just like, we can all do this. We all have our gifts to give, and we all have a place in this world for kindness and love and sharing what we have and doing the best we can. So I wanted to like knock all of that down. That's why like the quick blips in the press were so annoying. It was like hero language, like hero is a hero, you know, it's just,
Yeah.
we can all do this work. And actually people in their communities are doing this work. And yeah. Oh, Libby.
Yeah, we do have some questions. Libby asks, how can we support Blink Now and Coppola? There's a
Thank
few
you.
ways.
Yeah, so you can support Blink Now and Coppola by joining our Roots program. It's a monthly donor platform, a monthly giving platform where you can give, you know, anywhere from $5 to $10 to $20 a month. That directly supports our programs and our work and our kids and what we do. It's an awesome community of Blink Now family and supporters, and we have conversations and special monthly newsletters for that. We're looking for, oh, thank you, Barbara. Yeah, you can give, you can engage on our social media platforms and follow along on the journey. We're on Instagram. You can learn more about our work and get involved. And our donors and our supporters are really the lifeblood and the heart and center of what we do. No, you know, no mission without all of our supporters. And yeah, so consider getting involved. We'd love that. And then what was the other question? Anything else? How I decided to go to Nepal? Oh, that was just.
Got to read the book.
Yeah, there's a lot in there. I fell in love with Nepal.
That many of the questions that were in chat, like what does the school name mean and how did you end up in Nepal, are covered in the book in a really wonderful way. So I really encourage people to do that. I didn't interrupt to do Q&A earlier because I was so enjoying the conversation between Luke and Maggie, but I would let you keep, somebody just said they would recommend it for their book clubs, and I definitely would second that. The book only came out a week ago today, actually, so congratulations on that. And the one question that I had for you, Maggie, is did you keep a journal to track this incredibly personal story that you're sharing, or how did you reconstruct this decade of your life?
Yeah, so writing is something that I started doing in high school. I was nurtured by teachers who believed in me and the public school system. I loved books as a child, and then I just journaled and wrote. So I had actually way too much material for this book. We started with like way too many pages, and it was about really condensing the story to get it where it is. So we had a lot of stories to tell, and just building that narrative arc and figuring out what to include, what not to include. But yeah, I've been writing since the very beginning. Thank goodness. And to everyone listening, like write letters, write to people, share the story. The website's blinknow.org. But my writing was just a way that I processed like thoughts and things that I was going through, and just little memories of the kids. I wrote them love letters, which is how each and every chapter starts, with a love letter to the kids. Oh, Adrienne Kirby's here. You are a mother to so many. How do you balance your biological family in North America? That's the right term. And your Coppola family miles away. For those of you who don't know, I became a biological mother after being an adoptive mother for many years to Ruby and to baby Everest. I just had a baby. And how do I balance it? I am so fortunate. When we created Coppola Valley, we wanted it to be run for and by the people. And we saw a vision where it was run by, I wanted the children to look up and see Nepali leaders. So I have a co-founder and we have an entire Nepali team. And at this point, it's 100% Nepali run. And so I'm really grateful that I get to be able to have a life here in North America as well. And I'm back and forth. And Ruby is starting up pre-K at Coppola Valley School in June, which is going to be exciting. But I was also able to have the privilege to come back here and give birth. Ruby's just starting to understand, like, oh, like, did they come out of your tummy like my brothers and sisters? Because they're all here. The two of the kids were here last week, and she's starting to ask those questions of like, why does my skin look different? Because she's 4, she just turned 4. So it's all just a balance and a conversation. First, she spoke a lot of Nepali. Now she's speaking a lot of English. But somehow it's beautiful. Like, it was so nice last week. I had newborn, toddler, college kids, and it was just this beautiful spectrum of life and ages. And the oldest, my first child, Nisha, was carrying baby Everest, and Krishna, my son, who's now studying at Notre Dame, was holding, Ruby and running around the house. And I just felt so blessed and so lucky to have this whole like family and so much love and everything integrated together, and have both worlds colliding. I am so New Jersey. I love it here. This is the community that made me. I love it here. Like, I love being here, and I also love Nepal. And I used to think I had to choose one or the other. What does home even mean? And I explored that theme in this book for sure. And now the answer is like, home is everywhere. My husband's Canadian, just to like throw one more country into the mix. Thanks, Adrian. Oh, people are getting their books. I'm so excited for you to read them. Thank you for ordering. The orders of the books help so much. And if you like it, please review it as well. Thank you for ordering the book. It's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other, there was one question, and that, what's next for you, Maggie? What's on your plate?
So we are currently expanding our children's home. So we're working on that. We are creating open source guides for each and every program and our model and what we do, like how we built the school, and sharing it. One of the most common questions that we get is, I want to do what you did, how do I do it? And we want to create more of a culture for collaboration, share our models, share our learnings in a really open source way. So we're looking to do that. And we have children coming our way every single day. So just making sure that we are there for them and continuing to sustain our work. That's been really important. We actually got a new little boy and a new little girl, a 2-year-old and a 8-year-old yesterday. And we run a safe home for girls. So we just want to be that place for children to come when they have nothing and no one. And when the worst thing in the world has happened, we want to be that home. We want to be that school. We want to be a model for change. We still have 153 million orphan children in this world today. We still have human trafficking. We still have child labor. We still are not reaching our full potential as a human family because not every child is being given a chance. So we'll keep, singing out that message and that vision of a world where every child is loved and safe and educated until the cows come home, until we get there.
What an apt quote for an audience largely from Vermont.
Till
the
the
cows
come home. And Adrian, thank you for bringing up Ukraine. I mean, this has been, what a time to watch. We've seen the effects of war. We've seen what it does and how it disproportionately affects women and children and men forced to fight. and these conflicts, and that it's still happening today. And right now, as we speak, is just so devastating, seeing the imagery of pregnant women and refugees fleeing their countries, and that this is still happening in 2022 is incredibly, incredibly hard to reconcile. And love to our, human family in Ukraine, for sure. Oh, Yankee Bookstore. Woohoo! Anne, thank you. Awesome.
So, Luke, do you have any other comments to close us out?
Buy the book. It is a wealth of wisdom, and the story is amazing, and it's got a lot of heartbreak and some amazing quotes. Maggie, my favorite quote, I think, is when you're building the first home. I can't understand much of what the construction crew says to me, but I think we're somewhere between 4 days and 4 months behind schedule.
4 days and 4 years.
Yeah, that would work too. But it's got a lot of laugh out loud moments and crying moments. You won't be disappointed.
Too.
Thank you.
I agree. Okay, well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Luke, for setting it up, and Maggie for joining us, and for all the work that you're doing. It truly is inspirational.
Thank you for hosting us.
Oh,
Thank you,
my
Uncle
pleasure.
Jim. We love you all.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for being